Welcome to Chapter 3. We'll discuss malicious attacks, threats, and vulnerabilities. I'm going to go over a lot about the malicious attacks, threats, and vulnerabilities and their impact to our IT infrastructure. Talk about some of the malicious software and some of the countermeasures or ways we can mitigate malicious software, some of the common attacks and their countermeasures. And we'll briefly touch social engineering and how to reduce the risk, threats and types of attacks on wireless networks, and threats and types of attacks on web applications. So malicious activity is definitely on the rise, and you can probably see on a monthly basis some form of news about some malicious attack that's happened somewhere. Data breaches are occurring in both public and private sectors. As far back as even, for a long time, China is one of the top countries of origin for cyber attacks. They accounted for at least 41% of all known attacks in 2013. U.S. was second at 10%. I'm not sure what they were talking about there, but I guess so 10% of the attacks originated from the U.S. For known attacks. All right, so part of our job as security analysts and IT analysts, and even consumers, users, workers, employees, right? What are we trying to protect? The data, customer data, but it could also be your intellectual property and your company data as well. But customer data is definitely very valuable and important. Trying to protect our IT and network infrastructure, our intellectual property, finances and financial data, our services and availability, and then our reputation. These are all things that we're looking at to protect. And these are the various domains, right? The 7 domains again, that are in play within various attacks, right? Where are they trying to attack? What are you trying to protect, right? But so you got the user domain, the LAN domain, LAN-to-WAN domain, the WAN domain, system application domain, remote access domain, right? What are you trying to protect, right? I guess I forgot the workstation domain, but these are all areas, and depending on what you're trying to protect, on how you handle this, right? But then who are you trying to catch, or who are you trying to protect this from, right? Black hat hackers, they try to break into IT security and gain access to systems they have no authorization for, and mainly though black hat hackers are trying to just prove their technical powers. They may or may not be out for gain, but black hackers generally develop and use special software tools to exploit vulnerabilities, and they may exploit holes in the systems, but generally they don't attempt to disclose the vulnerabilities they find to the administrators of the systems, because they want to be able to keep coming in. They don't want people to know they know how to get in, right? So they're going to hide that fact that they can exploit a system. White hat hackers, right? They're your ethical hackers, and they're your system security professionals, your advanced security system professionals who have authorization to identify vulnerabilities and perform penetration testings. The difference between a white hat and a black hat is that white hats will identify the weaknesses for the purposes of fixing them, right? And they tell everybody, and they let everybody know, and they try to resolve them, and so that no one can exploit them. And black hat hackers, they find the weaknesses just for the fun of it, or to exploit them, and they don't want to tell anybody about them unless they're telling other black hat people how to get in, but they don't want it fixed. Gray hat hackers, they're kind of in between, right? So they don't necessarily have authorization, and they will identify vulnerabilities and holes, but not to exploit them. Typically, they're looking for a reward for not disclosing the vulnerability openly, right? So they're kind of, you know, they're not using it to exploit it themselves, but they're trying to make money or gain from discovering it. And then crackers, they have a hostile intent. They possess sophisticated skills, and they are interested most likely in financial gain, or destroying a reputation, or stealing information. They represent the greatest threat to our networks and information resources, because they are malicious, they are hostile. They definitely have a means to cause harm in some way. So we have various attack tools that the crackers or black hat, gray hat analysts will use. Protocol analyzers, also known as sniffers, right? They basically, you consider them like a wiretapper. They listen to what's going on the network, and allow the user to gain all kinds of useful information, and see everything that's on the network, depending on the protocols being used, and that's what it talks about. It knows and reads the headers of all the packets and all the information going on, and it organizes it in a way so that the attacker can gain useful information, or actually even steal data or passwords, depending on how poorly coded the application is. Sometimes passwords are sent in the clear, and you can get the passwords with a sniffer. Port scanners, they're just trying to find out what ports and also what protocols, what applications might be running on a system. OS fingerprint scanners, they try to figure out what kind of operating system a machine that they find is, because together with the port scanner and the OS fingerprint scanner, you know what type of application is running on what type of OS, and then you can try to run exploits based on that OS. So it's important to figure out what kind of OS a device is running for the hackers. Vulnerability scanners, they're actually known exploits and issues, and the software allows you to try to run through a lot of them and try to figure out if there are any known vulnerabilities in a system that can be exploited. And then exploit software, right? These are known exploits for certain software or OSs, and they're written, and so they automatically exploit it and make it very easy. This is where the term, you might hear of script kiddies, where novice hackers are trying to learn to hack, but until they do, they use tools like this exploit software that's written by an advanced hacker or cracker that does the work for them, right? And makes it easy for them to just run a script and to gain access and exploit a system. War dialers are really an ancient holdover here. I guess because it has the war in it, the book decided to leave it in, but a war dialer is a software program that dials phone numbers looking for modems and or fax machines and other computer systems that can be exploited. But the majority of computer systems no longer reside on a phone network, at least behind a modem. We've moved on and gotten a lot faster speeds, and it's very rare that a system is going to be behind a modem today. But that's what that did. So it was made it easy for someone to go through thousands of phone numbers and find the computer systems in that area that they could then try to crack and exploit. Password crackers, just as they are, they're trying to crack or figure out the passwords and be able to gain access. And then keystroke loggers, they log all the keystrokes. A lot of times these are like a USB device or um, other device that somebody will plug in your keyboard into and then plug it back into the machine, and they're very small. Or they just maybe plug into the USB device itself, or it could be software that you download accidentally and runs in the background, and it logs every key stroke on the keyboard, including your passwords. And then once they get access to log, then they get all the information that was typed during that time of that capture, and it could, from the time it was installed until the time it's removed. So it includes passwords as well. So they can be dangerous, and they can be very easy to miss, right? Especially if it's plugged in the back of a machine in a unused USB port. It could be very difficult to know that it's been done. What is a security breach? According to the book, it's an event that results in a violation of any of the CIA security tenets, right? And the CIA is the confidentiality, integrity, or availability, right, of our systems. And then some security breaches disrupt system services on purpose, right? A denial of service is an example of that. That's their whole goal, is to deny service or disrupt the service. And then some are accidental and may result from hardware or software failures. Those are more rare, but yeah, it can happen. So here's some activities that can cause. They're not limited to these, but these are the ones that the book has called out. So the denial of service, once again, that's just an attack on a system to try to overwhelm it so that it can't provide legitimate services to its users. A distributed denial of service, or DDoS, is a denial of service, but instead of maybe using one machine, it uses hundreds or thousands of machines to deny the service, and so it's harder to protect against this. For example, if you're doing a denial of service from one machine, it's very easy to just cut off the traffic from that one machine that's attacking you, and then you're okay. But if it's thousands of machines, it's hard to block the traffic from 1,000 different machines in different IP ranges and different areas. So that distributed denial service attack is much more extensive. Unacceptable web browsing behavior. Right, going to sites you're not supposed to. I guess that's one of the best ones. But so it's causing you to go, say you download software and then it changes your search web page or your home page to a site that you shouldn't be going to, or to just a hacker site. It's unacceptable web browser behavior. Wiretapping, sniffing, or putting devices in between the lines and catching the information. Using a backdoor to access resources. This is done a lot with software that you might think is legitimate, and you download it, or free videos of new movie releases, and they contain software that allows the hackers a backdoor into your computer, and then they control your computer and do attacks like a distributed denial of service from your computer because they have a backdoor into your computer. Um, Accidental data modifications, right? Any of that, and it could even be intentional data modifications, changing the balance of a bank account, right? That's an intentional data modification. And right, so we're just going to go the denial of service attack. Um, you know, it's a coordinated attempt to deny service. Some of the attack types, right, using the SYN flood. The SYN flood attack is using the known TCP/IP process, where when you're establishing a connection, you would send a SYN, and then you expect an acknowledgement from the machine. And what you do is you send thousands or millions of SYN requests, and then the machine that gets them is busy sending acknowledgments. And then a lot of times these are also another one is the Smurf attack. Smurf attack sends, for example, thousands of ping requests, uh, um, but the reply to address, the source address, is the target computer. So say you wanted to bring down Google, right? You could ping, send a ping request to Amazon, send thousands of them, but say that Google sent them. Send the IP address of Google in that request. You have to use special software to do this. But then Amazon would send thousands of replies back to the Google server, right? In an attempt to bring down Google. And so in a Smurf attack, right, it could actually be that you could, bring down Amazon and Google if you could send enough. I mean, those are probably bad examples because you'd probably have to send millions and millions of requests, and I'm sure that they would know and be able to block those requests if they even got there. But that's the idea, of a Smurf attack. And then, like I said, the distributed denial is more difficult because it's not coming from a single system, it's coming from thousands of systems. And so it's different sources. And then, right, unacceptable web browsing we discussed, wiretapping. Right, so you can do between the lines wiretapping. This is doesn't alter the message sent by the legitimate user, but inserts additional messages into the communication line when the legitimate user pauses, right? But you're connected, to them. And piggyback wiretapping intercepts and modifies the original message by breaking the communications line and routing the message to another computer that acts as the host. So it actually, so between the lines, just sends stuff and changes information or sends additional information during breaks. Piggyback wiretapping actually modifies the message. And then passive wiretapping is the sniffing, using sniffers, and that's just watching all the data on the line. And right, so backdoors are hidden access included by developers. The attackers can use them to gain access. That's the whole idea. Is a backdoor is an access into your computer. And then data modifications, right, can occur. Some additional security challenges that we need to be concerned with is spam, right? So that's unwanted, unsolicited email message, right? Spam is unsolicited or unwanted instant message, or even text messages. I guess could even fall into there, but they call it spam. Then cookies. Cookies, they store data. Companies, websites store data within cookies. And depending on the cookies, hackers can use these cookies to gain access to sites, banks, and other information. And so your cookies need to be protected, and because they or cleared, right? Because they store a lot of useful information that hackers want and need. And then hoaxes. There are times where the attack itself is just saying that there is an attack, you need to do something, and it's actually a hoax. So I know years and years ago there was a email message circulating that if you had this certain file, you needed to go out and delete it because you were hacked. And it was actually a legitimate file, but it was just spending people's time wasting and sending on the email to everybody else, and uh, it was just a big waste of time. It was a joke, getting people to delete something that they actually were supposed to have, and spending the time sending it on. Please forward this on. It's an emergency kind of hoax. So we do have those. Okay, the risks, threats, vulnerabilities. We've kind of seen this a little bit before, but right, the risk is the probability that something bad is going to happen. Threat is any action that can damage or compromise an asset, and a vulnerability is the inherent weakness that may enable threats or harm systems or networks. Right. So you can't eliminate risk. You can mitigate it, but there's always risk, right? You can minimize the impact of threats. You can reduce the number of vulnerabilities by minimizing the threats and reducing vulnerabilities. It does lessen the overall risk, but it's still going to be, there's always risk to some degree. And then together, right, these negatively impact our CIA triad in some way or another. Okay, so most common types of threat, and malicious software definitely, and hardware software failures are a threat. They do harm, right, but they're not necessarily very intentional, right? The internal attacker, an employee, a disgruntled employee, or a bribed employee, those can be very dangerous. You just have random equipment theft, external attackers. It's where a lot of time and security is placed on, because but the internal attacker is just as bad, if not worse, because they're behind your main firewalls and your internal systems. They have access to them. Natural disasters are threats, right? Industrial espionage are threats, and then terrorism can be a threat. Right, so, and then vulnerabilities cover a wide range of systems and network weaknesses. Insecure servers and services, that have outdated packages, poorly programmed software, clear text protocols, are all things that you need to try to help mitigate and reduce. Exploitable applications protocols, including programming flaws, can be manipulated by attackers. Unprotected systems and network resources shouldn't be left in the open. Um, Even including development servers. So development servers are where you test out things first, or you know, it's your test environment supposedly, um, but sometimes companies don't do a good job of securing them, and they open the door for attackers. Uh, let's see here. Threat types, disclosure threats, right? There's sabotage or espionage or disclosure threats. They threaten to disclose something, right? Your information, your data. Alteration threats, you know, unauthorized changes, right? Changing the bank balance, right? Denial or destructive threats, right? A DOS attack is an example of that. Um, okay, so what is a malicious attack, right? There's 4 types of categories according to the book. Fabrications involve the creation of some deception in order to trick unsuspecting users. Interceptions, and interceptions involves eavesdropping on the transmission and redirecting them for unauthorized use. Interruptions causes a break in the communications channel, which blocks the transmission of data. Modification, the alteration of data contained in the transmission or files. And these are types of some active threats. Birthday attack, it's just used on the premise that, you know, if you have a room with like 30 people, you know, 2 people will have the same birthday. It uses that kind of logic within its attack. Brute force attacks, or, you know, password attacks. It's trying to go through every random character and key combination. Many times it'll use a dictionary password attacks, where, you know, trying to use words that are based in the dictionary, common words. IP address spoofing. That was like in the Smurf attack, right? Spoofing is to uh, uh, lie, basically. You say you have this IP address when you don't. So it's spoofing. It's basically kind of like the masquerading. You're saying you're one thing when you're not. Um, Hijacking, you know, is just, you know, just like the word annotates, you're hijacking, you're taking control. Replay attacks, they replay a message or cookie or something of that nature to try to redo something. A good example is, maybe you had someone send you $50, you know, and you captured that process of them sending $50, and you replayed it so that you know, over and over, so they kept sending you another $50, right? That's kind of the example of the replay attack. Man in the middle attacks, that's where they try to intercept the conversation in between. A good example of this is if you go to Starbucks or someplace with a free Wi-Fi, the hacker emulates or makes you believe you're connecting to Starbucks, but you're actually connecting to their Wi-Fi that looks just like Starbucks, and then you go to your bank. So you go from your computer to the hacker's Wi-Fi, and then to your bank. They're in the middle of that conversation. They're seeing everything that you're doing because they're in the middle. That's a man in the middle attack. I'll probably discuss that a little bit more later, especially when we get into the wireless and all that. But Google a Wi-Fi pineapple. It's a very inexpensive device that allows a hacker to pull off this hack. It's like $100, and they can make it look like any free Wi-Fi hotspot, which is why I recommend never doing anything over Wi-Fi hotspots that's important in any way, shape, or form. unless you're, and if you have to do it, you utilize a VPN. Buy a VPN service. If for whatever reason you have to go over a hotspot and do anything like banking or purchasing anything, because it's very very easy for a hacker to be in the middle and act like a free Wi-Fi hotspot. Then masquerading, right? It's just pretending to be something that you're not, right? Just like that Wi-Fi pineapple, it's actually masquerading man in the middle, right? So it's both. Social engineering, right? That's the use of tricking people into doing what you need or giving you the information that you need. Phishing is fraudulent practices of sending emails to masquerading as somebody reputable or from the company in order to induce someone to reveal personal information, such as passwords, credit cards, etc. Phreaking, it's an older term. The book still loves to hang on to these telephone days, but it's a hack into someone that hacks into telecommunication systems, especially to obtain free calls. It was phreaking. And then farming is the practice of directing users to a bogus website that mimics or appears to be a legitimate website in order to obtain information such as passwords or accounts. And malicious software is software that causes damage, or escalates somebody's rights, divulges private data, or modifies or deletes data. Viruses attaches itself to or copies itself into another program on the computer. Right? It tricks the computer into following instructions not intended by the original programmer or developer. It infects the host program and may cause the host program to replicate itself to other computers. And users who run infected programs authenticate the virus and it allows it to run. Versus a worm is a self-contained program that replicates and sends copies of itself to other computers without users' input or action. Whereas the virus needs the user to kick it off or run it. The worm can run all by itself. Does not need a host program to infect. Does not need user interaction. It's a complete standalone program, and it'll propagate throughout your network without anyone having to do anything. A Trojan horse. This is malware that masquerades as a useful program. So once again, it may look like it's a very useful program that you may even paid for it. And downloaded and installed it because it does something, but it also does something you don't want or didn't know, because it hides a program that either collects information or provides a backdoor into your computer or actively uploads and downloads files. So it's a Trojan horse. It's software that looks and does something that may be useful and may be legitimate in some sense, but it also contains software that is malicious, that provides access or does something destructive. Now, rootkits, they are extremely dangerous and very difficult to detect and remove. They conceal its existence. Once it's installed, it takes over your operating system. So all those calls between the user kernel and the kernel, it goes into the root. It inserts itself into the operating system to where it lies to the operating system, and so it's almost impossible to detect and remove because it has full control of the system. It's at the root. You know, your operating system has no idea it's infected. You know, and so it can be very, very difficult to remove these. Spyware is a type of malware, right? It threatens confidentiality of information, right? It's spying on you, monitors your keystrokes, scans files, snoops applications, reads your cookies, right? May change your default homepage on the web browser. But yeah, for the most part, it's about collecting information. And some common types of attacks, right? So attacks on availability, right? These impact our uptime to critical systems, applications to data. Attacks on people. These attacks involve using coercion or deception to get another human to divulge information or to perform an action. Getting them to click on a URL link or open an email attachment from an unknown email. These are some simple attacks on people. Attacks on the IT assets themselves. These include penetration testing or hacking, right? Unauthorized access, privileged escalation, stolen passwords, deletion of data, or some kind of other data breach. Social engineering attacks, right? Because the users are our weakest link, right? And social engineering is the exploitation of our users, of our people, right? And so these are the different types of social engineering attacks. Right, authoritarian, you're pretending to be in a position of authority to coerce them. Consists of social proof used in a position that everyone else has been doing it. Dumpster diving, finding unshredded pieces of paper or something in the trash, right, to be able to exploit. Familiarity or liking, let's see here, hoax, right, creating a con or a false perception, right, impersonation, pretending to be someone else, ID help desk or delivery person, a bank representative, shoulder surfing, looking over someone's shoulder while they're typing on the screen, phishing, performing a phishing attack by telephone in order to exploit uh, uh, personal information, or using verbal coercion, persuasion, quote, sweet talking the individual to doing something. Um, and then whaling, right? Targeting the executive user or most valuable employee, or someone high up, considered a big fish or the whale. And it's often called spear phishing, but as well, targeted attack at a high-end employee. Bluejacking, hacking and gaining control of Bluetooth. Evil twin, faking an open or public wireless network to use a packet sniffer or any user who connects to it, right? So that's just like the Wi-Fi pineapple is an evil twin attack. IV attack, modifying the initialization vector of an encrypted IP packet in transmission in hopes of decrypting a common encryption key over time. It's a very sophisticated attack, and it's dealing with the encryption. Um, and then packet sniffing, capturing the packets off a wireless network and analyzing the packet data using tools such as Wireshark. Um, Replay attacks, replaying an IP packet stream or cookies in order to fool the server into thinking you are already authenticated. Ward chalking, like I said, and war driving. The book really likes the old hacking references, right? So war chalking is create a map of the physical or geographical location of any access points and networks. So you would actually use chalk on the sidewalks to indicate when there was an open Wi-Fi. Once again, this is very old school. Most Wi-Fi's are secured now, but in the past, when users were first getting them, they were open, and you could see on sidewalks the chalk drawings of war drivers that would actually go around neighborhoods looking for access points that were open, and then they would leave signs on the walls or sidewalks and somewhere to indicate that there was an open Wi-Fi. Buffer overflow, attempting to push more data than the buffer can handle. This creates a condition where the software does some unexpected thing, like possibly get you into elevated privilege mode or be able to capture data. Client-side attack uses malware on the user's workstation or laptop within an internal network, acting in tandem with a malicious server or application on the internet. On the outside, so a compromised internal machine that helps someone from the outside, do the attack from the client side. Header manipulations, right? Stealing cookies and browser URL information and manipulating the header with invalid or false commands to create an insecure communication or action. Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, or LDAP injection. Right, so LDAP is one of the most popular authentication databases, and it uses the Lightweight Directory Access Protocol. And so an injection is creating a fake or bogus ID and authentication commands and packets to try to falsely authenticate to a web application. Malicious add-ons, using software plugins and add-ons that run additional malicious software on legitimate programs or applications. SQL injection. SQL is one of the more popular languages for databases, at least it was. There's a lot of different ones nowadays, but it's still very popular. And SQL injection, if your program's not written correctly, commands can be injected into the data, into the fields, and have the database provide you more data than needed. For example, if it's written poorly, instead of putting in a password, you could type in a certain command in the password field and hit the enter to log in, or hit the login button, and instead of logging you in or saying you have a bad password, it actually brings back all the users and passwords in the database. So this is very, very powerful and very bad if your program is not written correctly. XML injection is the same thing, but it's using with XML data, attempted to retrieve data. Countermeasures, right? So what is a countermeasure? It's something that we use to help prevent or mitigate the threats, right? So we want to detect the vulnerabilities and fix them, right? Try to find ways to prevent attacks, respond to the effects of successful attacks, user training, things like that. These are countermeasures. And then you can also get help from law enforcement agents, forensic experts, security consultants, and then having security incident response teams to help resolve issues when they occur. Right, so countering malware, as I said, countermeasure is creating a user education program, because the users are our weakest link, so bringing the users up to speed is one of the biggest ways you can help defend yourself. Post regular bulletins about malware problems. Never transfer files from unknown or untrusted sources. Use anti-malware. Test new programs or open suspect files on a quarantine computer. That's one that's not network accessible, right? And see what happens and monitor it and see what it tries to do. Install anti-malware software and then use the secure login and authentication process. Then to stay abreast of developments in malware, you can go to the staysafeonline.org or the us-cert.gov. These are two good places to stay abreast on what's happening in malware. And then finally, we're throwing in firewalls, which I'm not exactly sure why, but firewalls are good, and we do use them. They're a program or dedicated hardware device that helps protect your networks and systems. It inspects network traffic that's passing through it, and it denies or permits traffic based on a set of rules. But most of the attacks now occur over port 443 anyway, and the firewall is going to let it through. But they are good. You absolutely have to have a firewall, but in the context of the malware chapter that we just finished, it doesn't play as big a role. Not as much as like intrusion detection systems, prevention systems, and anti-malware, antivirus software. Those play a bigger role than a firewall, but we do have to have them because they do prevent some port scannings and things like that. That is the end of chapter 3, and I'll see you in chapter 4.